Welcome to heCast, the official podcast of HeChangedIt. My name is Mike Chisholm. I am excited to be here today. I am excited to talk to the people that I get a chance to talk to. You know, it's funny, HeChangedIt is starting to move forward, and I keep saying that every podcast I talk about the neat things that have been happening with HeChangedIt. More and more people are downloading the app, and the communities are starting to actually fill up now, which is cool. People have been using the resources right from the beginning, and my goodness, you ain't seen nothing yet compared to what the HeChangedIt team have in store. Thank you for supporting this podcast. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. If you haven't shared it yet, please do, because at the end of the day, we are trying to bring content that will help clear some of the blurriness that lives in this world right now, in the world of men and mental wellness and all sorts of wellness. That we want to hit on everything as we build this movement, as we build this empire that is HeChangedIt. I am always excited when we have a guest who is willing to sit down and talk with me. Today is a really cool one. I got goosebumps right now kind of thinking about it. It's a cool one because we're talking to a very gifted artist, a photo artist, but also one that has a story behind him. And that story is one that I think, while a sad story, has an ending that looks towards hope and towards helping others through the example of that story. I know a little bit about that personally in my life, and I know that we're going to get into that today. But we're also going to talk about building towards one's dreams and one's skill set and all sorts of things. Because the guy that we have on this podcast is actually one of the foremost niche photographers that I've ever encountered. He's when it comes to doing headshots for people. So we're talking the entertainment world or whatever, the social media world. A good headshot is very important. And so it's neat to meet somebody who has taken their skill set, what they're very good at, and then they've honed it in to a very specific niche part of that skill set. The gentleman that we have on today is named Trevor Walker. And Trevor is one of the foremost headshot photographers, dare I say it, in the world. He probably won't like it, but it's the darn truth. Trevor Walker, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be part of heCast today.
Thank you for the invitation and the very, very flattering introduction. I appreciate it.
I know you don't like hearing it. It's nails against the chalkboard, but I'm going to push it. We're going to stay in the fire here for a second. You are a headshot photographer of great renown, aren't you?
I mean, maybe in certain circles, I appreciate it for sure. I am a headshot and portrait photographer for sure. And thank you. I appreciate the kind words for sure. I'd like to think I do a pretty good job. And it's kind of the key part for me. But as long as people are happy, that's the most important thing.
Now, take us through a little bit about your journey as a photographer. Where did it start? How did it end up where you are now? Where have you specialized in such a part of the photography world?
Yeah, it's a great question, which actually deeply connects to what we're going to be talking about shortly too. So I started doing photography in 2013. My wife bought me a camera while we were on a trip in LA, and I was just trying to figure it all out. Then we went to. She also bought me a course on how to use it because I was no good at pictures. I didn't know composition, didn't know lighting, didn't know anything.
Yep.
But then I did a course in Vancouver on Granville Island with this guy running around teaching us all the ins and outs of it. So kind of fell in love. I did for a while weddings, I did engagements, I did you name it, I shot it all. Boudoir, I shot like everything. And then I basically focus on headshots because I realized that as a former career, I was a recruiter. So I was very comfortable talking to people, and I enjoy talking to people quite a bit. And I realized that when I had somebody one-on-one in front of my camera, I could take them from a place of nerves to a place where they'd be a bit more confident, just like somebody looking for a job, kind of bump them up in a certain way so that they're feeling great about themselves. So I doubled down and I went and got taught by one of the best in the world. And now I mentor people for him. And I focus deep. And then my transition, where it connects to what we're talking about, is that I made this because of that massive life change that happened to me.
Yeah,
I decided I'm going to be a photographer full time. So it was part of what we're talking about that made me go down that road to become a photographer full time.
That is gobsmacking to me right there. And it's funny. We don't do a ton of pre-interviews on this thing because I like the conversation to just unfold naturally. I was going to ask you about your craft a little bit first before we went into this event that happened in your life, but you're bringing it up right now. Now, you're a gifted artist. You're doing, you're living your passion in that regard. You're able to, that old Chinese proverb, if I don't know if it's Chinese or not, but I heard that it was Chinese. If you can monetize your passion, you don't work a day in your life. And I'm sure that can ring true to you a little bit right now. The fact that you came to that, not just because you fell in love with the camera, but because of a life event that happened. You're a family man. You're a dad.
I'm a dad with an 8-month-old baby girl.
A dad with an 8-month-old baby girl. And it's safe to say life-changing.
Very, very life-changing. Yes.
Yeah. That's where we are right now. And I think it's important to talk about how you are right now. And I think that's where that's where I want to start before we go into your story, Trevor. Right now, scale of 1 to 10. Yeah, we're in a pandemic right now. There's all sorts of crap that's happening. What's your happiness level right now and your fulfillment level?
Oh, it's 10.
10.
The one gift of the pandemic is that my wife was working at home while she was in the final stages of her pregnancy. And then because of what I do, I work in the home as well. So upstairs, I could hear ever so slightly as my wife playing with my baby girl. So I'm gifted that I get to spend time with them both. It's amazing watching our little girl grow. Like it's absolutely incredible. So I am more fulfilled than I ever would have imagined, for sure. Okay.
And we're saying that because we're bookending this, and we're going to say, there are happy endings to hard stories. And I want to go back now. So 2013 is when you got the camera. A few years after that, maybe you just want to pick it up from there. Your story is so powerful. I don't really want to interject narrative to it because I think you're the most powerful narrator there is. Walk us through what happened.
So my wife and I, we wanted kids for a while, and we were trying for a little bit, really, really short little bit, and then in end of summer 2016, she was pregnant. And it was, early fall, I should say. And it was crazy. It was actually nutty because, it's our first, we're both, a little bit on the older side. Like we were in our late 30s at the time. So then to have a kid was like, whoa, we had a house, we were established, had careers, all that kind of fun stuff. And she did it by putting like family stickers, those little stickers on the back of windshields that say all the families. Yep. Yeah. So she did that. And then it was it. We were blissfully ignorant to the pregnancy. We did things. We went places. She was pregnant. She got to the complaining stages, and everything was great. Went to the doctor. She's healthy, and everything was good all the way through to the end. So at 37 weeks, she was feeling a little bit uncomfortable, and she was feeling a little bit strange. So she decided to go to the doctor. And I was at work at the time. So it's basically our baby's heart had stopped. There was no more life inside of her. And when that happens, that's very, very much there's nothing you can do. So I got a phone call while I was at work, and it was her saying, it was the nurse at the maternity clinic that was like, you need to come down right now. And I was like, what are you talking about? Come down right now. What are you talking about? And she was like, you need to come down to your wife right now. Your baby's heart stopped beating. And I'm at work. I'm literally
on the phone before you went down there.
Yeah.
How was that drive?
And that was it was, you know what it is? It was a fog. It was just a fog. Cause I'm like, well, that's, it's okay. Just fix it. Just, give her a shot, I don't know, fix it. Like it was so like, just do it. And they're like, your wife needs you. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll hop in the car and go.
Absolutely.
Drove the whole way, and it was a fog. It was just like because I was a good hour drive away. So I spent an hour kind of looking out the window like, it's okay. And I remember going through these ridiculous emotional tidal waves of like, could it be that you lost your baby? No. She's at the very tail end of her pregnancy. There's no way. Tail end.
Yeah.
And so we went through the whole thing. So I ended up going there. And then while I was there, she was crushed. And the doctor pulled me aside first and kind of broke it all down for me. And even then I was like, what do you mean? That's not your brain doesn't let you do certain things at certain, like, so I was just in disbelief. I was like, this not a thing. There's got to be something we can do. The baby's been healthy the entire time. There's been nothing. No, my wife didn't have any gestational diabetes. There's no precursors to any kind of a risk at all.
Yeah.
Nothing. So it ended up that and that was it. And they were just literally, everyone was really kind, but they're like, sorry, your baby's no longer living. And then subsequently, I mean, they said that your wife has to birth that baby in a week. So,
oh my God.
Yeah. So then we went through like, it was, so at 38 weeks, she delivered, our little girl.
I have to ask at this point here. So they tell you that, shock is just, it's one of those things you talk about how the body has things, the brain, you kind of went down that path a little bit. We have mechanisms on board, biological mechanisms that help us deal with these types of traumas. I can personally from I've got a story with a young baby in my life that went through some extreme trauma, and it's one of those things where the fear of hearing this sometimes is worse than the actual event of it, because you don't realize that during that event, you actually have the ability to go through it. I think many times we think about, I could never go through something like that and be okay on the other side. When you were in it for that week, what were some of the things in the reality of it, rather than the fear of it? What were some of the things that went through your mind? What were some of the things that you did as a husband to be there for your wife? That must have been the longest fucking week of your life.
It was horrible. Yeah. I think, you mentioned the brain and our brain's ability to switch gears. So instantly I wanted to make sure she was okay, because it's my wife. I got to make sure she's good. It's so I tucked it all down. We went to therapy and everything afterwards too, but I tucked it all down and I was like, you gotta, bury that shit right now. It's not your time, it's hers.
Yeah.
So, make sure your wife's okay. Cause to carry around your baby that is no longer living, I can't imagine. I can't at all. So I remember the first thing we did was we just hopped in a car and I drove, and we were living in the Lower Mainland, like near Vancouver.
Vancouver, yeah.
British Columbia, yeah. And we drove for hours. We just hopped in the car and drove.
Where did you drive?
We drove out to Chilliwack, and then we drove out back to Abbotsford, and I was trying to get lost. And it was such a tremendously, it's very strange. My wife and I were blessed that we have a great relationship. We always have. We're great at talking to each other. We're very, very logical. She's a scientist and a doctor, so she's a smarty. So, we are very logic driven, but both of us just struggled with, what do we say? How do we say it? Like, what do we do? And we're not even trying to talk about our feelings at this point. We're just trying to understand. I had built the crib a week before, 2 weeks before. I had set up the bedroom. We had painted. There was the threshold of, is your baby going to live? Passes at about 3 months, because everyone's like, after 3 months, you're good.
Absolutely.
So all of a sudden go from like, we're going to see her next week to, oh, she's never going to be in the crib ever. Wrapping our brains around that was almost impossible. So we drove for hours, and then we would say little things back and forth. Like I was always trying to, between both of us, we were trying to be transparent towards each other. So we never once were like, it'll be okay. We didn't say any of that shit because we knew that it's not the case. We aren't going to be okay.
Right.
But we have to figure out what the next step is going to be. And then we just had as real conversations as we could. For me, my top thing was I wanted to make sure that she understood that it had nothing to do with her. And I know till this day, she still struggles with that. Even though we've done an autopsy and we've gone through the entire thing, and the doctor from the get-go said there's nothing indicating there was nothing. My wife was like, oh, but I bent over and my back felt a weird thing the week before. And she clings onto these thoughts that most people would say that's crazy, but you can't say that to somebody in that position.
No.
So that's where it started in that week. And then we tried to do whatever we could to distract ourselves without trying to be forgetful. And we really hid because Kristen was quite pregnant. So she didn't want people talking to her at that point. She had a physical
everybody's
belly.
Going to ask the jovial questions.
Oh yeah. Everyone wants to touch that stomach. And when you know, I'll say this. So I'm going to give I'll say this. If I'm being fully transparent now, my wife and I have talked about this a lot. When you lose a child like that, certain things that are not good social norms of speaking became very normal for us. So calling our child dead baby, which we say to strangers and they're like, oh my God, it's appalling. But that was our only way that we could just clearly discuss it. Like, you know what I mean? We didn't want to say our little angel that left, like we didn't go through any of that. We just started saying the dead kid, and we have a name for her and all that stuff. But we were very transparent with the way we felt because it helped us process the anger. Because you go through so many wild emotions.
Yeah,
it's insane.
I want to ask a couple little questions about some of the things that you've said along the way here. You alluded to the fact that you had a name. You knew the gender already at that point?
We did.
Before, like you knew it while the kicking was going on, and did you have a name already at that point?
Yeah, Noelle.
And that was it. You were locked in. Noelle was coming in a couple of weeks, kind of a thing. Okay.
Pick color palettes, pick clothes, you name it.
Okay. The other question that I have for you too is you alluded to the fact that you didn't say to each other, or you said you didn't allude to it. You said, we never said to each other, it's going to be okay. Did you know at that point that sometimes it's okay not to be okay? Or was that a concept that kind of came to you later? Like, it seems to me like coming up with that macabre, that dark humor about it. And I understand where you're coming from when you say that. And I think a lot of guys who have gone through something traumatic will understand that. And it's not appalling when you've been in it. Did you know that it was okay not to be okay at that point?
Yeah, we did. There was, when going through that kind of a thing, even in that week before and then after it was all done, the concern came about how do you continue to move forward? Because it's no longer about being okay. You're not. You're fucked up for life. It doesn't end. It's been years later, and if I think about it just too hard, I start to tear up. So I knew then, I was like, it's never going to be the same ever.
So this is 2016, right?
2017 May was when she when she passed.
Okay,
which is just horrible now.
Obviously, we talk about sometimes. I fell down a ravine when I was a kid, and I got this scar that's down here on my. I was like maybe 12 years old when that happened, and it's a scar that I'm 45 now, and I look at it, and there it is. This is one of those scars, except it's on the inside. It's emotional. It's in the heart. It's there. And it's a scar that gives us perspective and experience on who we are and who we become in the end, at the end of the day. But back then you don't know that at that point. How dark did it get for you two? Did you two talk about some of the things that are, we would consider in a healthy place unthinkable? Did you guys talk about that stuff? Did you immediately start looking for solution of trying to heal so at least the scar would be okay? Or was it a process to get to that point? It's twofold. So if I'm talking after we delivered Noelle and said our goodbyes,
for me, the thing was I had buried everything down so deep that I was kind of like questioning if I was even going to be able to kind of bounce back.
Yeah.
And I'm not, excuse me, I'm not a guy who cries, historically speaking. But now I am. I'm very emotional. It's very strange afterwards. Now, TV shows would make me cry, but even then, it just wasn't something. I grew up with no father, so I was kind of like I always assumed the role of I needed to be tough. So when this thing was when we were trying to take steps forward, I noticed that randomly I went back to work weeks later. And while I'm just doing my work, doing my thing, I was as a recruiter at the time.
Okay, so you weren't even a photographer. So that's where we get back to the beginning of the story here. Yeah. You were a recruiter, yeah?
So I was a recruiter, went back to work, typing on my keyboard, and I started bawling uncontrollably. No thought had come in my head.
Wow.
No negative thought. I didn't think of Noelle. Wasn't thinking about my wife. I was just typing, and all of a sudden I'm blinking, and I'm like, why are my eyes full of tears? And there was this sorrow that kind of overwhelmed me. And I'm at work and I'm in an office, but it's glass in front of me. And in the role I'm in, people come to my door every 2 minutes. Yeah. And while I'm doing it, somebody came to the door. Trevor, I had a question. I'll give you a minute. Wow. And I was like, it's fine. Go ahead. It's fine. And then she left and I just started breaking down and sobbing. And my partner at work, like the person we were paired up with, she kind of came over because the other person's like, Trevor's bawling. And then she was a mom of 2 kids. So she came over and she was like, you can go. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to go. And I remember that I calmed down and I was walking to my car. I was about a kilometer away. So I was walk to my car. Yeah. And I'm walking to my car and I'm like, it's okay. You're fine. Boom. Start crying again, uncontrollably crying and sobbing and and then I was like, what's going on? And but it wasn't like I was hiding at that point. I was just like, what is this? What's this thing happening? And it happened like 2 or 3 times on the drive home. And it was a long drive home. And I got home and I said to my wife, I'm like, I don't know why, but I can't stop crying. And she took longer to go back to work, which is a whole separate thing. But, it's just I considered it a pit is what I always visualize it as a pit. Yeah. And if you can stand on the edge of that pit and look down, you're okay. And then that sorrow would hit you and you'd fall a bit into the pit. And if you can catch yourself partway through, you can climb back out. You're okay. Yeah. Which is the burying part, in my opinion. But then if you go too deep, it's an overwhelming rush of emotions that you no longer have control over. I think that's probably what I'd struggle with, which is why we ended up going to therapy, because we wanted to see, are we going the right direction? Are we healing?
What, the event in your office, give us a time frame as to how long after that event occurred.
When did that occur? 4 weeks.
Okay, so a month later. After. Okay. Yeah. You talk about the idea, and I think that any man listening to this that has a partner would identify with what you're saying right now when you say, it was all about my wife. So I just took how I was feeling and I put it aside and I pushed it down. Yeah. And I just put my focus on her. I certainly identify with that. Now, that being said, when we're in the airplane, right. And if the cabin depressurizes, we're supposed to put our own mask on first. Mm-hmm. But how in that situation, and we put our own mask on so we're safe, so then we can assist our loved ones that are with us, right? And that makes sense from a logical standpoint. But how in the world could we not take those things and bury them down? And I guess if my question to you is this, is knowing that you were going through stuff and you were burying stuff back there, if you could talk to yourself while you were going through, if Trevor of today, whose happiness is a fucking 10, could go back and talk to Trevor of that 4 weeks removed from that situation, would there be advice? Do you have enough clarity now where you could give advice at that point?
I think the one thing I learned, as time progressed, I would, once I thought that my wife was at an okay point, not even. So I'll rewind time. In the hospital while we were waiting to deliver, which took a day and a bit, it was very horrible.
Oh my fucking God. You're kidding me? This isn't just a procedure that they know how to do.
No.
It's quick. A day and a half.
They literally, in the hospital, there's a room with, if you ever see a butterfly in the door in a maternity ward, that's where the babies that don't make it go. They induced her. So she had to literally, it was as though she was giving birth. There was the entire process of pushing and everything. The only difference is they gave her gas to kind of ease the pain.
Yeah.
A little bit of fentanyl too, to try to ease the pain.
Right.
There was the whole thing. And I was, that's a scarring event.
You're there as the coach, essentially, how you would be. Yeah. You're there coaching her through it.
Yeah, and the endorphins your body releases during that process, whether your baby's living or not, is very similar. Because I remember that same feeling when our second daughter was born, and I started bawling because your body, like when you're coaching her through, and it's push, and she's pushing, and even though she pushed out, and then Noelle kind of came to the world, but never really came to the world. There's still this moment where you're like, oh, yay, we did it. Oh yeah, that's right. This tragic end, but your body gets you to a certain place. So I had the wild, like, yeah, we can do it. And even then, I remember, if we're talking selfishly, she doesn't know this, but I was crying when she was trying to deliver Noelle. And while that was happening, the nurse put her hand on me and said, like, are you okay? And I shook it. I remember, like, I just did this, and I looked at her and I was like, don't. And then I was like, it's okay, just breathe. Because I was telling my wife she's going through this traumatic thing, and I'm falling apart. I'd have to turn my head and kind of like let the tears kind of roll out of my face, and then come back again and be with her, because she needs me to be in her ear saying, you got this, you're amazing, keep pushing. And it's hard. It was a hard thing to deal with, for sure. So I mean, to go back to what you're saying, at that point, I would take breaks to go to the car just to cry. I'd go to the car and I would bawl and yell as loud as I could, as like emptying my emotional tank, because I had to go back in there and be strong for my wife. So to talk to my younger self, what I would say is, it's okay. You can cry. Like, you can let it all out. And you're good.
That sounds like it's actually the healthy way to go. And it sounds like for a lot of guys out there, to be able to do that, the idea of doing that is something that I think many men would stifle and try and block it. I mean, I don't know. I know you said you went to therapy and things like that afterwards. Was that the right move, going out there and emptying the emotional tank? Whatever it is for you, it was in a car screaming. For others, it might be, scream singing metal music. It might be a punching bag. It might be is that outlet? Is that the healthy way to go to release that kind of shit?
Everyone's going to do it their own way. So I don't want to think that other people should do it a different way. I think for me, I had reached a point when I started randomly crying and breaking down. It's because I never tried to deal with my own emotions, because I would see it as that dark pit I talked about earlier. And if I thought about it too much, I'd fall very, very deep in that pit.
And your whole life, you were the logical guy that didn't do that. So this was foreign to you at that point.
It was very foreign and very uncomfortable, because I thought, logically speaking, I'm like, that's the depression. I have no family history of depression at all. Nothing for me. I've been very, very lucky that way. And I saw this as like, is that what happens? And then I'm like, I would say some wild stuff. Like, I would have traded my life for hers in a heartbeat. I would, if I could rewind time, I would be dead right now to give her life.
Yep.
And then I'm like, whew. So I was always trying to be like cognizant of myself, but at the same point, I wouldn't let myself get too deep in that pit. I wouldn't let myself go there until I did reach a threshold. Where and this is where my social media posts where you guys contacted me, was because I reached a point where I said it was okay. It's okay, which is what I would say to my younger self, where I'm like, it's all okay. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to tell people you're sad. It's okay to have feelings, and it's okay to have dark jokes with your wife when you might say the phrase, "You remember our dead baby?" And we don't laugh at that situation, but it's the way that we're able to cope with it. And I think that the biggest thing that I couldn't find a resource for was, how am I supposed to deal with it and be strong for my wife?
Yes.
And I reached that threshold where I'm like, you just got to be okay. It's okay to both cry at the same time. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like you accept your feelings, embrace your feelings, understand that they're there for a reason, and then use that energy to kind of change your life for her.
The social media post that you spoke of was, I believe it was you sharing a memory of a social media post from a few years ago, or you took a picture of it. And I want to ask about it because I think it's a powerful image first and foremost. It brought me to my knees when I saw it, and it was a picture of a closet, and up in the closet, in the corner of that closet, was a box.
Yep.
And that was the gateway that you used to talk about this memory. And the box was basically all that remained of what would have started the life of your first daughter.
Yeah, essentially, when you lose a baby, the hospital gives you this box, and they put stamps of the foot if you want it in there, and the documentation. And we ended up putting her ashes in there. We just tucked everything. We had a little toy that we brought to the hospital. We put that in there, kind of. So it was, for me, my wife handled it better than I did, but for me, it was the embodiment of our child and the whole experience in one box. And the post you're talking about was literally on her. She would have been 4 years old, and I talked about. For me, it was about the transparency, because we have a daughter now, and and even that was a hard fought. We had to do IVF. We couldn't have another child. We tried for years. It didn't work. We went through this whole ugly thing, but it ended up.
There's a podcast
IVF,
right there too, isn't there? Like, I mean, that's a whole other set of struggle, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, for sure, for another time. But
absolutely,
essentially, we we have a baby girl, and then we both want. In society, it's no one talks about their dead kids, or when they do, it's in such a way that's trying to honor them on a pedestal, and it always came
cartoonish, isn't it?
Disingenuous. It just seemed like, because what is it? Am I like, is my little angel? She would have been an astronaut. I mean, maybe, sure, I could have said that, but more for me, it's like, I don't want anyone to forget that we already have a daughter. Yeah. So I have two. Unfortunately, one's not with us. And for me, it's the biggest thing I debate every year, which I put in my social media post. I took a picture of that box in the top corner, hidden in our closet. Yeah. And I said, I debate putting up a post every year, reminding people that we have a dead daughter. And my truth behind that was, I don't want anyone to forget. I don't care how selfish that is. I just don't want anyone to forget, and I don't want someone to think, oh, you have an only child. Well, no, she's got a sister. Unfortunately, she's not with us. So that's where that social media post came from, is just a really tender place inside of me, for sure.
If I could throw some commentary or some response to what you just said, I want to know it, because at the end of the day, anybody who knows you, that's a part of you. And if you want, if you are allowing, or people want to know you, that's a part of you that they want to know. So I don't think it's selfish in any way, shape, or form, man. Like, I think that is, in fact, I think it's brave. I think that there's a lot of people who hide elements of themselves like this or other things that are not as shiny, that aren't as happy or positive or whatever. People like to hide that. And it becomes almost shame. Whereas you're going the other way and you're saying, no, take me as I am. I think that's I'm not a therapist. I'm not a coach. But at the end of the day, to me, that's the harder road, but it's also the healthier road.
Yeah. And I also think directly when it comes to other dads is that's never. So I ended up talking to maybe 4 people. My sister was one of them too, that lost children throughout a pregnancy. And there's many, many out there.
Absolutely.
But you never know. So even when I just first posted that we lost our child, I was flooded with people that were saying, you don't know me, but you were on one of your friends liked the post. So I saw it on my Facebook feed and commented, and it's a whole thing. There's a whole group of people out there. And I realized for me, I was like, I appreciate all these people that reached out, but not one of them was a dad. And I think that's where I started to struggle, because then I was like, do we just tuck it away? Am I supposed to, I just bury it, I guess, because it's about Kristen, not me. So I think that was where it became a very unhealthy place for me, because I would just bury. And then they're like, I remember even when someone would say, you know, you lost your child. Oh my God, that's horrible. How's Kristen? Which is my wife's name. And of course I was like, oh yeah, she's a strong woman. She's beautiful. She's, you know, we're dealing with it one day at a time.
Yeah.
But it was about her. Like, it was always, and you know, that was where a portion of me was kind of like feeling like I keep burying it and crying in parking lots at random places.
Right.
And then it reached a threshold to me where I was like, I don't care to hide it anymore, which is then that's why I post what I post. And that's why I'm very quick to offer help to anybody men specifically who want to talk about it, because there was such a weird stigma that no men ever talk about how they feel with losing a child.
Yeah.
And it was so strange that we're all supposed to have this goal to make sure our partner's okay. Yep. And we should, as a partner, we should make it. But then no one ever would talk about, like, even the people that talk to me about losing their kids, no one ever was like, connect to my husband. He can help you what you're going through, because it's very, very different from what your partner who carries the baby. It's a very different connection to the baby that she has than I do. But there was no one to really kind of help you through it. So that's why I do these posts once in a while, where I want to throw myself out there in the funny enough, the rare case that somebody might see it and be like, hey dude, can I talk to you for a quick sec?
Yeah.
You know,
when that does happen, first off, how often has it happened? And second off, does it bring it back for you, or is it something where you can actually take, I hate to use the word satisfaction, but I maybe relief or comfort, that might be a better word. Does it give you comfort in being able to take this experience and share it and help somebody who's kind of in it, closer to where, you know, they're still in the pit rather than looking, you know, kind of looking over the pit?
Yeah, it's a great question. I literally joined some dad groups.
Yep.
Looking for these people. So,
wow. You sought people.
Yeah. Well, first I sought groups. First I Googled, because if you look for people who have stillborn children, there's a number of mom groups out there, a number. There's support groups, there's Facebook groups, as you name it, but there are no dad groups at all. There was one in the UK that 5 guys would get together and talk about their stillborn kids in the UK. And I was like, what the hell? That doesn't exist here. But I wasn't ready at that point to do something of my own. That's why I didn't try to build my own little community about it, because it's too hard to deal with it. Right. So now it's more anecdotally me just jumping into somebody's, when they're commenting something, and every once in a while I might message somebody and be like, listen, man, there's weird shit happening in your head right now. So if you need to talk to somebody about it, just to swear or yell at the world or whatever, you know, let me know. But most men don't take advantage of that ever. Like it's such a weird stigma that we have to be the tough guys. We have to be the ones that bury those emotions, and kind of like, you know, it's a very weird thing. So I offer help wherever. You know, I probably talk to more women about it than men, but I offer the help wherever I can.
Well, you know, and talking to women about it, I think, is a gateway. I know, you know, it's funny with He Changed It. 2 things. Number one, you know, we're taking back that phrase, man up, and manning up is we're literally wanting to take that phrase and turn it into something more positive than what the current incarnation of that phrase is. And it's doing exactly what you're talking about here. It's actually taking responsibility, recognizing, and manning up is actually doing something about it in a positive way that will help benefit. And the second thing, you know, so congratulations to you for getting to that place of being able to recognize that and see how it is such a problem. This is why He Changed It exists, is because right now we've got so many men in so many silos living so many, you know, quiet lives of desperation for whatever it is, that our system in many ways is cracking, and we want to solve that. That's what my wife and this goes back, when I say my wife and her partner who founded He Changed It are both women, because they don't like the world that their boys are being kind of indoctrinated into with these things, and something has to change. And that's where the solution needs to happen. And I see it happening the same thing with you on a micro level, where you're talking to more women than men, and you're giving women insights, gateways of insight, and as maybe tools as to help their man who are in their silos right now. I don't know. Does that ring true?
For sure. Yeah. I think it's just like a weird, men's mental health is a weird little, silo is a great word for it, for sure, because it's really meant to feel like you just deal with your shit. You don't tell anybody else. You don't, like even my close guy friends.
Not even dealing with it necessarily. You're just living in it.
You're just living it. Yeah. Yeah. And even when I was going through the thick of it, and we literally went to one appointment with a therapist, and she was like, yeah, you guys are handling it well. You're okay. And I remember at the time when we sat in there, my wife was handling it very, very well. There was a lot of blame that she had on herself, but handled it well. But I was getting to the point where I'm like, I don't know why I'm crying. I don't know why I randomly break down. I don't like it. And it's weird. And I've never been depressed, and I've never had any kind of other mental condition. So like, what's happening? And it ended up, even when we were in the room talking to the therapist, I choked back, exploding, because she was like, Kristen, how are you? You okay? Yeah, okay. Kristen, what about this? Kristen, what about that? And then, but at one point she did say, like, Trevor, how are you? And I felt like I wanted to explode and be like, I'm cracking at the seams. I don't know what's happening. I cry for no reason. Tiny quick story. I went to go see a movie by myself because I just wanted to get away for a bit. And I went to go see a movie by myself. And the movie was Justice League. And it sounds crazy, but when there's a moment where Superman gets brought back to life, and he flies out to Smallville, and his mom opens the car door, and his mom's like, oh my God, my son. I bawled. I blew up. I'm watching Justice League alone, and I'm sobbing so loud, like so much I'm making noise. Like I'm literally like, like I couldn't stop it. And it was because I saw a mom reunited with the son that she thought was dead. And it was just like all these little cracks that were all around me that I couldn't contain. So there was those things that kind of started the process for me to be like, it's got to be normalized. It's got to be okay. It's got to start with me. Like, it's not that other people told me to suck it up. I believed that I was supposed to be a certain way.
Right.
Yeah.
You believed you were supposed to be a certain way. And it sounds like, those triggers, and everything else, and just the process of time and healing and knowledge revealing itself, where you started moving out of the pit. And I mean, like, it sounds like right now, if correct me if I'm wrong, you're out of the pit, you're on level ground, but you can look down in that pit anytime you want.
I live life circling the pit. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because it doesn't take much it doesn't take much to fall back down. Like I say to my wife is that if we talk too much about it, we both tear up real quick. And I think the key for me, at least when dealing with that, is like understanding that that's okay. The pit's okay. Right. It's going to be there forever. I don't want it to go away. I don't want it to close up. It's okay. And it's okay if you fall in that pit a little bit, but there's a threshold where you release. And then if you keep going deeper in that pit, there's a dark threshold that you don't want to go to. So the way I see it is like, you're allowed to be sad. You're allowed to remember. You're allowed to understand why. But when those feelings start to become more anger or, driving you to do things that think dark thoughts, then when you become a
fixation, you mean when you start fixating on it?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Even then, like, yeah. It's about, being okay with, I keep saying the same thing, but it's understanding that it's okay to have feelings. It's okay to be sad, and it's okay to talk about it with your partner. I started doing that, and it changed things for me a lot too, where when I thought she was past the threshold, I'd say to her, like when I'd come home, I'd be like, I cried most of my ride home and I almost couldn't drive. And she'd be like, are you okay? And I was like, I think so. But weird, and that's where our dark humor came into play, because the dark humor was a coping mechanism. But it was a healthy coping mechanism. Yeah. Because when you lose a child, everybody and their friend wants to give you their condolences. So my wife and I started becoming very transparent with each other, because I would say, like, And I'd say it different now, but back then I would say, I don't give a shit that you feel that you understand my situation.
Right.
I don't give a shit. So when someone was like, I totally understand what's happening to you, it's horrible, I'd be like, no, you don't. I wouldn't say it to them, but in my mind, I'd go talk to my wife, and she's like, I feel the exact same way. She was like, I don't care what other people think. I don't care. And it wasn't like we didn't appreciate them being sad for us, but when you're going through something, other people adding on to it by offering their condolences, it puts a pressure on you. It doesn't help you get past it. There's stages to it all. So we would have dark humor. On more than one occasion, I said "dead baby" to somebody who was trying to talk to me about our daughter, and I could see their face be like, "Oh, can you say that?" It's like the worst swear word in the world, but you do things to get by, and you do things to kind of make your brain settle a bit so that you can move forward.
And I want to move to the moving forward place. I am going to respond in one way, where you made me grateful for you and your situation, in the sense of dealing with something like that. I'm really grateful that you were in a relationship where you two could be that transparent with each other, and you were in a safe place to be that transparent with each other. And I can imagine that there are a lot of when we went through our family struggle with my granddaughter, at BC Children's, one of the doctors pulled us aside and they said, hey, just so you're aware, situations like this many times break up families. And what rang true for me was my wife and I have the same dynamic where we can be pretty transparent with each other pretty easily. And I think that is something that probably served you in that situation.
Absolutely. So I Googled, it's funny when you don't know the answer to something, you just Google it now, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
And I Googled, what's life like with a stillborn child? And which sounds crazy.
Yeah. Holy shit.
When I'm sitting in the parking lot, just crying my eyes out. I'm like, I got to figure out how to get past this. Like, what do we do? Because at the time you just think about getting past it. You think about moving on with your life and forgetting that existed, which isn't the case. But I Googled it. And the one thing I did see a lot was it's very cleanly either brings you very much closer to your significant other, or you'll be divorced. Right. So that was it. I saw that and I'm like, I certainly don't want to divorce her. I mean, we're pretty good right now. Yep. But, it really made us a much stronger couple. We were never, we were always very transparent with each other. Like I said, she's an intellect. She likes to talk and think and be very logic. Yeah. And the same thing for me, for sure. So, but it made us so much tighter, and we never realized that we would have these dark thoughts in our head. Yeah. And we got into this pattern where when we would have a dark thought, whatever it would be, we would verbalize it. And 9 out of 10 times, if it was because of a situation, the other person would say, I was thinking the exact same thing. Right. And it was a great way for us to get closer. Because when someone would have a picture, they'd be a small example. If somebody was pregnant, and someone's like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. And we'd see them like working out, and we would be like, well, be careful. You could kill your baby. And it's so dark to say that. And we don't wish it on anybody, not at all. That's not the point. No. But our brains would be like, we never thought about any of that until 38 weeks. And we have a baby that's no longer living. So, we would see it, and I would look at my wife and I'd be like, did you just think what I think? And she'd be like, yeah. Care if you're going to kill your kid. Right. And I'd be like, yeah, we both thought it. So it was good because we had this verbal transparency. Yeah. There were no boundaries. And that is an amazing thing to share with a significant other, because when you don't have these boundaries, it's just letting it go. I'm not trying to pretend to be something or someone. I'm just letting it all go. And it made our relationship a lot stronger, for sure.
I appreciate you talking about that. And I think that everything that we've talked about in this conversation so far, has left nuggets of truth, of advice, of I appreciate you being so articulate with this. It's unbelievable how articulate you are about this, and it just shows the journey that you've been on. And I want to continue on the journey a little bit to kind of circle it back to where we started. So this happened. You're a recruiter. How did that move into changing your life into becoming this unbelievably gifted photographer?
So thank you for the gifted part. But so anyways,
still humble. Even right now, talking about what we talked about, you're still humble.
So what happened was, so I had met the man who trained me to be a headshot photographer. I flew to Ontario, and that was in August of that year, shortly after it had happened. And I was, I watched him, and one of the things, I always loved photography, but I always thought photographers don't make money. It's not a thing.
Right.
And then when I did meet Peter Hurley, was the guy that taught me, and he's a world-renowned headshot photographer. I was watching him, and I was like, this guy, he's cool. He knows his stuff. This is super, super cool. And then there was still like a deep emptiness inside because of Noelle. There's a giant hole because I'm like, at this point, she should be throwing up at me, but she's no longer living. Yep. So there's a deep, deep, deep hole, and fight or flight kicks in. And for me, my version of flight was, I was like, am I living my life just one day at a time? Am I going into work and I'm doing I met this guy that I really like. He's taught me some cool photography stuff. I see photography that I love, and then I'm working a job that I thought I quite enjoyed, but by losing Noelle, it was like I needed to live for her. And it sounds weird and corny, but I was like, I need to make sure that the rest of my life is got a purpose to it. Like it's got a direction that I can follow. So for me, that was like, I want to try something different. Mm-hmm. And we ended up moving. And it's all interconnected in weird ways, but my wife ended up having an opportunity in a whole other city in Kelowna, which is in British Columbia. And then, so we ended up taking that opportunity, and I was egging her on because I always wanted to move there. Yeah. And I was like, we need this change. We need this change. I want to become a photographer, and I want to do this because we got to make it work, because, Noelle's not with us. So she hasn't changed our life the way that we thought, in that way. So I was like, it's gotta be, it's a part of it. Gotta go. I gotta do that instead. Like I got, and it was a big thing. So it was a combination of a lot of things. When you have a room that's made up for her, I didn't go in that room until the day when we moved out. We hired movers, and I said, go in that room without me because I can't. And they moved all her stuff out. Wow. And I'd gone in there twice, and every time I opened the door, stood still in that room for more than a second, I would uncontrollably bawl. So I couldn't go in the room. So then to tie it all back, it was her that made me say, like, you need to take a chance and do things that you wouldn't do, because you're getting a life that you get to live and she doesn't.
Oh my God.
So if she's not able to live her life, I owe it to her to live mine, to the point where at the time I was thinking I can get as much enjoyment and fulfillment out of what I do. Which is where I pushed to become a photographer. And we moved to a city where we didn't know anybody. I opened up a photography studio in my basement. Well, at the time I rented a studio because we lived in a different place, but I ended up coming here to my main floor of my house, and I built a pretty successful business since then.
And I want to talk about that. TrevorWalkerProductions.com? TrevorWalkerPhotography.com.
Yes.
TrevorWalkerPhotography.com. And on that, you've honed your skills, headshot guy, but you got courses, you have all sorts of things that you are doing as an entrepreneur within the photography realm. Talk a little bit about what you're doing now, and how people can access what you're doing, and some of the different avenues that are available.
Yeah. On the business side, I'm a portrait and headshot photographer. I take pretty pictures of people is what I tend to tell people. And, but I also do more than I do commercial photography. I do a whole bunch of stuff, but a lot of my branding is focused primarily on the headshots, because it is the most fun and one of the hardest things to get right. Headshots are so hard to get right, to get the expression out of somebody that it needs to be. On top of that, like I mentioned, Peter Hurley and the headshot crew that I'm a part of, and that group is tens of thousands of photographers across the globe that are all kind of learning under the same tutelage of Peter Hurley. And I'm a mentor for that group. So as a mentor, I help teach other people to be really good in photography, and to make money doing it. Because there's a lot of poor, the word starving artist. When I started photography, the first thing I said was, I'm never going to be a starving artist. I will find a new career before I would be a starving artist. So there's a way to grow a business, and there's a way to make a successful business. And luckily enough, I have a circle of friends around me that have helped me make my business quite successful. So I do offering on my website. You can get mentoring from me. And I do have courses coming out about how to build your business. I've done talks before, like the Staples Studio here in Kelowna, and I've done a bunch of other podcasts as well too, trying to help other photographers get successful in what they do, so that they could make money instead of focusing on being a starving artist.
That's a beautiful thing. And I think as there's a lot of parents out there who would applaud you for doing that, because when they hear that somebody wants to become an artist of any sort, they have no idea how they're going to monetize it. And it's beautiful to hear that there's somebody out there that teaches people how to do that, that they can have it all, that they can have their cake and they can eat it too.
Absolutely.
And it's beautiful to hear that you do that, as well as the actual skill. I want to talk about headshots for a second. I mean, have we ever lived in a time and place where headshots are more necessary than they are now? It's not just for the Hollywood actor anymore, as a necessity for callbacks or for auditions and stuff. I mean, I look at people's LinkedIn now. I looked at people, everything when it comes to social media. How important is a headshot for somebody that has a forward-facing or a public-facing persona of any sort?
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because as a recruiter, I lived on LinkedIn for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And I never quite realized the detriment a bad picture could have on somebody. Your profile picture, whether it's in your company email or whether it's anywhere, is the first step in how you build trust, and you build a knowledge of getting to know somebody. So
bad communication that happens in that picture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We talk about that in session, is that how to be looking confident, but still kind of have some warmth in you as well too. And it's the psychology of what I would talk about as a recruiter, because I would prep people for interviews, and I would say things like, maintain eye contact, or, keep your chin at a certain height. Because if you're talking, if I'm answering questions and the head's back, so it all kind of connected. And I directly apply that towards my headshot photography to kind of make people look super, super confident and determine what level of warmth they want to give based on the audience that's going to be looking at them. Because whether we like it or not, we all have audiences that are looking at us. If you're a job seeker, you're on LinkedIn, your followers are looking at you. If you're on Instagram, you have people that follow you there as well too. If you're YouTube, you have subscribers. So everyone has an audience of some kind, whether you think it's a personal branding or not. And it's about, making sure that you're always putting that best face forward. It's so cheesy to say that. That's not my line. But that's what I'm saying is the face means a lot in that case.
Well, it's your best face forward, or like you said earlier, the face that you want to have. Like, what do you want to convey? You may not even know what your best face is until you actually talk about it and you figure out what the outcome of that picture is dictating. You might not even know what your best face is when it comes to that.
It's totally true. In session, that's one of my favorite things, is the discovery, because everyone thinks, I want my eyes big. I want a big smile. I'm like, no problem. And then I teach them how to control their expression, which sounds weird, but in front of a lens, you need that to happen.
Yes.
And then once I get to a certain point, I can be like, let me show you what you look like when we're a bit more serious. And I'll just say a couple of things. They won't even realize it's happening. Then they look at the screen and they're like, oh, that's me. That's what I want. The biggest compliment I can receive was when somebody says, like, that picture looks just like me. Not a cool version of you, not a happy version of you, but that's how I want people to know me, is that picture right there. That's how I know that I've kind of done a good job of what I'm trying to do.
It brings me back to, I feel like you and I both are a bit into the pop culture stuff and whatnot. So I'm going to use an example out of the Matrix. It's like when Neo builds himself, the digital version of what he thinks he looks like. He's not the guy with all the little things inside of him, but they plug him in. And that's how he looks. And it's the self-projection of what you feel like. You help give that to people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's cool, because it's cool when that can also, it helps. It gives people confidence. Like, there's a lot of good bonuses that are very heartwarming to me about it. Like it's a very fulfilling. I say this all the time. I find it nutty that I get to pick up my camera and make a great living making people happy with pictures. It's crazy, but I love doing it so much.
Well, that's damn cool. And also you get to make a great living teaching people how to do the same thing, which is also awesome and fulfilling nonetheless. I mean, you have addition in your business by the clients that you help, but you also have multiplication by teaching people how to do the same thing. And my word, that is fulfilling. And where it comes from is also a gobsmacking in that regard when we go to back again as to how that happened in the first place. And I can imagine that you are living a more authentic life than you ever would have thought that you were living. And the irony of all of that is astounding to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially there's little things that you enjoy. Once you get past a certain threshold, you really do enjoy things differently. Even my daughter now, 8 months old, we love her. We love her so much. And the thing is that we look back now and it's like, we don't want to change anything because then we wouldn't have Everly, which is our daughter now. So it's kind of this weird conundrum that we get into where we're like, we don't want to change what happened because we love this baby girl that we have now.
Yeah.
But the love is so like, I keep saying, my wife says that I'm horrible because I said she can be so spoiled. I was like, going to give her first house. I'm going to give her her first car. My wife said, can't do that. I'm like, no, she's getting it all. She's going to be entitled. I'm fine with it. But the love is very different. Like, when you lose a child, it's not that you just love your new child more, your second child. It's very different. You appreciate so many things, like things even in the pregnancy. When Kristen was pregnant the second time, you appreciate it so much more. The first time, I remember we were watching TV and, whatever, she's pregnant, whatever, but the second time around, it'd be like, let's feel, let me put my cheek up against there, and you'd feel a kick and I'd be like tears in my eyes, so you just kind of get to enjoy the entire process that much more. And it changes the love. Doesn't make it more, doesn't make it less, but it makes it that, when my daughter now, when she started crawling for the first time, I cried. Oh. It's crazy. I never even thought about it's crawling. What is that? My house is now a death trap because she's mobile. It's a whole different danger. But when it happened, it just, you start to tear up instantly. So there are things that are positives, not pluses, but they're things that changed inside of me that I appreciate from losing Noelle.
Well, it's almost like it's you could see outside the windows before, but then when you get them cleaned, you can really see outside, and you never appreciated how dirty they were before. Whatever that level of love, that level of gratefulness. I mean, I can hear the gratefulness in you as you're talking about Everly. Yeah. That's a beautiful name. As you talk about her, I can hear that gratefulness, and it's got a shine, a clean to it that, that just would not have been the case had circumstances been different. And I told you it was gonna go by quick. Trevor, I have to tell you, I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for you talking about this as you have. I will tell you this when we're off camera and things like that. If there are any, with HeChangedIt, I can promise you that the founders of HeChangedIt, they're looking for resources that can help people like this. This is the type of stuff they want to put into the app to help people for stuff like this. But guess what? This here conversation is a resource to help people go through this stuff. And I cannot thank you enough for being as transparent, as vulnerable as you have been in talking about this. And I'm really grateful to hear from you that you are a 10 out of 10 on the happiness scale when the pit does exist, but it shows that it's possible when pits like that exist to get out of them. Thank you. And I appreciate the platform you guys are developing too. And I appreciate you giving me the ability just to kind of tell my story. I hope somewhere any guy that would hear it, I do hope it helps at all. That it's okay to be you. It's okay to go through that kind of stuff. There's more people that are going to always be there for you, for sure. You have shown that. I believe that you will show many people that through this conversation, but just through the life that you're living right now. Thank you so much. And Trevor Walker Photography.com. It's TrevorWalkerPhotography.com. Yeah. On social medias, I'm Trev Walk, TREVWALK. You can kind of find me on Instagram on all of them. I'm everywhere. Right on. Well, you know what? This podcast is going to go up in a couple of weeks after the day of the recording. We'll make sure that our socials coordinate that as well, and we can all share for each other and be there. This is a message worth sharing. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be here and to tell this story. And you told it in such a beautiful, authentic way. And I just want to say thank you so much for being you and being willing to share that. Thank you. I appreciate the ability to talk about it for sure. They go by quick, And there's another episode right there. My name is Mike Chisholm. I'm appreciative of all the people who have already subscribed, shared this podcast. The people who have downloaded He Changed It, thank you for that. I encourage everyone to share this. We are building a platform to help men deal with all of the different situations that come into life, including ones like this. This is why we do what we do. I don't know if you can feel the power. I certainly do. I've had goosebumps multiple times through this conversation. I do that a lot of the time in the conversations we have here on heCast. And I just want to say how grateful I am for the ability to do this and for the good that's coming out of this. That's another episode of heCast. My name is Mike Chisholm for heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. Go change something.